fresh this morning, isn't it? I thought I'd honour my Kiwi roots and wear a t-shirt. Look at me. I'm regretting it right now. I have a jersey in my car. I haven't quite made it to go get it, but I'll be getting it straight as I get off here. So, how's everyone good?
Yeah.
You good? Yes. Turn to the person next to you. Give them a smile. If you haven't got someone next to you, make sure no one doesn't give a smile. Very nice, very nice. Very important, because today we are finishing our series on the big emotions in the Bible, and this is a biggie. This is a biggie. They've all been big. I mean, anger's pretty big. Sadness is very big. Joy was great. Wasn't Brian awesome last week? And today we're talking about fear and anxiety. So it's an important emotion that I'm pretty sure in this day and age most of us want to know about. And what the Bible has to say about it. I've learned some things about fear and anxiety this week that I didn't know last week, that I'd like to share with you. First, I'd like us to look at some sort of, theoretical fear stuff. Let's do some learning. And then I'm just going to use myself as a case study, as an experiential fear and anxiety, which hopefully we can all learn something from. We've got, this is such a relevant topic, and this time, more than ever, it's fear and anxiety is just in our language, it's on our minds all the time. Is it because of how we live? Is it society these days? Is it part of human nature? All of these things, we talk about it all the time. I looked up earlier this week some psychologists' definitions of fear and anxiety, and there was a very, very nice learned lady, and her definition as a psychologist for fear was the anticipation of real or perceived threat to your life. Fear is the real or just perceived anticipation of a threat to your survival. Her definition for anxiety I thought was really interesting, because she said it's the real or perceived anticipation of a threat to your emotional well-being. Isn't that interesting? I thought that was very helpful. And right about there, I'm just going to park it by letting you know that I am not a psychologist, I'm not a counsellor, I'm not a psychiatrist, not a content creator of those type of things either. I am a co-labourer in Christ, family. I'm a pastor. So I can't talk as a psychologist about these things, but what we wanted to talk about when it came to the emotions was, what does the Bible have to say? How does the Bible treat these things, and what can we learn as followers of Christ about these emotions? So we're going to deviate a little bit. The psychologist lady that I was listening to, she said there's two types of fears, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, well, that's absolutely true. I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just going to add an extra. We've got an extra fear as followers of Jesus. I don't know. If you're a Christian, there are three kinds of fears that I want to talk about today. The first fear, very important. First fear doesn't come up in all the reading that I did and all the, looking at YouTube psychiatrists that I did. But the first fear for us is really important. The actual first fear for a Christian is the fear of God. It's a very important fear that we need to talk about today. The second fear that exists for everybody is actually called healthy fear. There are good fears in our lives that exist. The third kind of fear is unhealthy fear. I think that's what we probably all want to talk about. It's the bad fears. It's the things that keep us awake at night, stop us from doing the things that we want to do. There's healthy fears, there's unhealthy fears, and there's the fear of God. And I'm going to unpack these a little bit for us this morning. But before I do, I just want to tell you about this Hebrew word for fear. So in the Hebrew, in the Old Testament, there's so many words for fear actually. The Hebrew words for fear are a lot. But there's one word that comes up more than others. I'm not going to say it right. So I think it's like Yoreh, something like that. It's not too good. Yoreh sounds quite nice. But actually, it's the primitive root word for fear in the Old Testament. And what it basically boils down to is this idea of trembling. So I want you to think about this. This idea of trembling is the root word for fear in the Hebrew scriptures. And out of this idea of trembling comes all these ideas of fear. But because it's about trembling, not just about being afraid, you can tremble. Think about this in your life. I bet sometimes you've been trembly when you have a car crash, right, your body will shake without you even knowing what's going on. But sometimes you have that shaky feeling on the inside. Sometimes it's attached to dread. Sometimes it's attached to being scared of something. But sometimes you have that shaky feeling on the inside for joy. The Bible talks about trembling with joy. I don't know if this has helped me a lot in my life, but anxiety, do you know, in your body, anxiety and excitement in your body without what's happening in your mind are exactly the same experience. So, wouldn't it be interesting to think that trembling with joy and our way of thinking is potentially excitement? Isn't that interesting? Anyway, you can also tremble with reverence. You can tremble because something is just so awesome. Something just blows your mind and puts you in your place. And it's so reverence-making that you tremble. So this word for fear can be used in a few different ways, but it comes from this idea of trembling. Why that is important is because the first fear that we're going to look at this morning, the fear of God, trips up so many of us because it's hard to understand fear of God and not being afraid of God for us when we use all that language together. But the fear of God, what is it basically? It's this idea of trembling because something's so big and powerful and puts you in your place, like you just realize that you're actually little. God is actually so big and in control and amazing, and you're kind of nothing, and that experience sets you to trembling on the inside, and we would call that the fear of God. The way that I personally look at it is I have watched over my time some YouTube videos of big Navy ships and big, those cargo ships that come from China to here or whatever. So you can watch YouTube clips of these boats in like incredible storms on the ocean, and these are huge, massive boats that are built for this, but the ocean is going to eat them. It's terrifying, but in an amazing way. It's terrifying in a way that makes you think, wow, nature is incredible. I'm not in control of anything. That is a huge boat, and I don't know if it survives that storm because the ocean is so powerful. The ocean is so big. The ocean is so more than this little boat. This boat can't control that thing. It's amazing to think about for me. Anyway, so that feeling that I have watching my YouTube clips of the boats on the ocean is a feeling of awe. It's a feeling of respect. It's a feeling that puts me in my place in regards to all of creation, and that for me reminds me of what it's like to fear God. I don't feel terrified of the ocean because I'm not there. Maybe if I was there, I would be vomiting my little brains out. But I just feel in awe of nature. The fear of God is kind of like that. So what does the Bible say to us about the fear of God? Most of us know this, right? Proverbs 9 and 10, famous, very famous verse. Psalm 111 also says this. It says the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Job actually goes a little bit further. Job in Job 28 says the fear of God is wisdom. That feeling of, wow, God is awesome. I'm trembling on the inside knowing that I'm a speck of dust and God is this big ocean. That is wisdom. Proverbs 8 says the fear of God is to hate evil. Kind of like the fear of God is the opposite of evil, if you would. Proverbs 22 says the fear of God, the reward that comes with the fear of God is riches, honor, and life. The fear of God brings riches, honor, and life. And Proverbs, the last little reference we've got up there today is Proverbs 19, and it says the fear of God leads to life. And we should ask at this point, how? How does me feeling like a speck of sand watching the ocean destroy cargo ships, how does that lead to life? How does that become wisdom? How does this trembling that I have, knowing of my place in regards to an awesome big God, how do I practice that in a way that leads to wisdom? Good, that is a fantastic question. I'm very glad everyone's wondering that and pondering that. Especially everyone who's on their phone. Nah, jokes. I know you're taking notes. But we're going to leave that right there because that has to do with something we want to talk about at the end. But I want you to park that in your brain. How do you practice the fear of God? How should you practice fearing God in your life? Because here's the next fear. The next fear that we want to talk about is what is healthy fear. We practice this all the time. Healthy fear is basically the thing that keeps you alive, you know. Healthy fear is that thing that our ancestors had when there was a little bit of a rustling on the Sahara, you know, and they knew it was a lion and they didn't run towards it, they ran away from it. Healthy fear is just part of being a human, actually. It's the thing that keeps us alive. There are people that they study that don't have the parts of their brain that give them healthy fear, and they do really dumb stuff. Like you take them to the pet shop and they go and try and play with the poisonous animals, or they go swimming with sharks, or they studied a lady who didn't have the ability to fear, and they got her to watch every horror movie that was ever created. And the researchers said she laughed through most of them. And while that kind of just seems like nothing, if you think about it, if you're laughing through horrible things, if horrific things are humorous to you, I don't know if you're in the, I don't know if that's the best way to practice our humanity. That's not actually the best version of being human. If we don't have the ability to just have healthy fears that keep us alive, then we're a little bit not quite right. That's why we worry about our teenagers, right? They don't yet have the ability to have some of the healthy fears that could keep them alive on the road or at parties. I think healthy fear is probably very well thought about as the thing that stops you doing dumb stuff, which is basically makes healthy fear common sense. Which is good because the Bible has a few things in Proverbs to say about common sense. Common sense is a good thing to have. I just picked two. Proverbs 2:7 says, God grants common sense as a treasure to the honest. God gives you common sense. It's a treasure. God gives you the ability to not do dumb stuff that's going to threaten your survival. Proverbs 21:16 says, if you don't have it, you die. Straight up. If you don't have common sense, it threatens your ability to have a long, healthy life. That seems quite straightforward. How do we practice healthy fear? Good news is we don't have to practice it. God built it in. There is, in most of us, the ability to not walk in front of a bus for fun. In most of us, there is the ability to not go and play with rattlesnakes. Most of us have the ability, because God built it in, to just stay alive, not do too much dumb stuff. Cool? So just enjoy that. Enjoy that about your human experience. Enjoy that about you. Here's the big one though. Here's the one that I think most of us probably want to know about and learn more about, and that is, what is unhealthy fear? What is unhealthy fear? Dallas Willard, a theologian and philosopher, he has my favourite definition of fear, and he just says that fear is the anticipation of evil. Fear is the anticipation of evil. I was thinking about this in regards to the psychologist's definition of fear and anxiety, and I was thinking, if fear is the anticipation of evil in my physical life, in my survival, then is it possible that anxiety is the anticipation of evil in my emotional life? I am anticipating that bad things are happening, and I can't control it, and I don't know what to do, and I'm not up for it, and it's too big for me, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't think I've got what it takes, and I just am anticipating evil to myself emotionally. The Bible says some really interesting things about fear. The Bible talks about fear quite a lot, actually, doesn't it? Most of the great characters in the Bible have an episode from, the start to Mary. There's so many incredible heroes of our faith whose journeys start off with God turning up and telling them not to fear. The Bible is full of, and God encouraging people not to fear. Don't be afraid, I'm with you. I picked a few verses to share. I know you will know most of these because these are pretty famous, but I thought I'd read them through. Philippians 4:6 says, do not be anxious about anything. We know this, you can say it with me, but pray about everything. Don't anticipate, let me just, remix it. Don't anticipate evil in anything. Just pray about everything. 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast all of your anticipation of evil on him because he cares for you. 2 Timothy 1:7, we know this one, says, for God has given us a spirit not of fear, a spirit that doesn't have to anticipate evil. He's given us a spirit that's powerful and loving, and he's given us a sound mind. David in Psalm 34 says, I sought the Lord and he answered me and delivered me from all of the ways I had been anticipating evil. Matthew 6 tells us of Jesus, he tells his disciples, don't anticipate evil in anything. Don't be anxious about tomorrow. Consider the flowers, consider the birds. They don't worry about tomorrow. God's got them. They understand that. Isaiah 41 is my favourite. It just says, fear not, I'm with you. You don't need to anticipate evil in anything because I'm with you. The difficulty in this can be, though, if we're honest, and how do we practice this in everyday life? How do we practice it? Because we want to practice it, right? And we memorize verses and we quote them to ourselves, and we have, that good old, probably not so much these days, but there's a great Christian dynamic of just the stop it model, of just, you're anxious, stop it. Just stop it yourself, you're afraid, stop it. It's been a long-term Christian model towards fear that really didn't work, but we still sort of sometimes try and practice it. Because we know that there has practicing it, knowing this and knowing it. Wow, that's what is that? There's a gap there sometimes for us. The thing that I think is very interesting about anxiety, in the Greek, the word for it is meroneo, I think. I really probably murdered that, sorry to the Greek speakers, so I apologise, Christine, to your ancestors. Basically it means to take thought. It means to take thought and to care for something. This is really important. In the New Testament, the word for anxiety, the word we translate into anxiety, means that we are taking a thought and we're caring for it. I don't know if you've ever cared for a plant or an animal or a child, but when you care for something, right, what do? You feed it, you protect it, you give it everything that it needs to grow. The word for anxiety in the New Testament gives us this picture that there are thoughts that we take that anticipate evil, but we take them anyway, and we protect them, and we look at them a lot, and we help them grow. The word for anxiety kind of gives us an idea of how we might bridge the gap from knowing what the Bible tells us to really knowing and practicing what the Bible tells us in regards to fear. Now, what you need to know is that fear is not a sin, okay? Our emotions are not a sin. What the Bible really teaches us about fear and anxiety is that they're not sins, they're signals. Your emotions are not sins. It's not a sin to be angry. They're not sins, they're signals, and they're signposts. They're things that are meant to direct us to the fact that we are looking after things in our lives that are teaching us to anticipate evil. We're looking after these things, and that is a choice. Doesn't feel like it, I know, when it's happening. But the opposite choice is the way we start to practice not being fearful people. We know this is true because when you're caught in sort of like a fear cycle, you know that you don't want to be there. That there is some sort of limit on your life. You're not being who you want to be. That you're not acting how you want to act. It's not, this is not it. This is not meant to be it. We know that. But we get stuck in being human. We sort of get stuck. And for some reason, at this time in the course of eternity, it seems to be a lot easier to slide into the anticipation of evil than it is to slide into the anticipation of good. There is an interesting guy, he's a psychiatrist, a Christian psychologist. His name is Dr. Kurt Thompson. And I heard him talking about a talk he did to some pastors one time, and he said to them, you want to know why you're fearful? First, let me just ask you, how many times did you check your phone today? And he said, what these pastors realised as he was talking to them is that you need your phone. He's not hating on your phone, but what he's saying is what you give your attention to is what you ultimately end up worshipping. And we give our attention to so much stuff, and we somehow quite often give our attention to the thoughts and the feelings in our lives that help us anticipate evil, and we feel seduced by them and we feel powerless to them. But he said to these pastors, it's fine, I did it too. I pulled out my phone hundreds of times today. But how many times did you just pull out a scripture and meditate on that for a little bit to get your mind onto some truths? And the truth is, from the inside, all of us, until we decide to do something different about it, we are formed by just things that are happening around us all the time. And it's an active choice. It's an active fight to take our attention and to take our energy that goes into tending thoughts of anticipating evil things happening, to take that energy and put it into tending the thoughts, tending the feelings that anticipate good. Is why the fear of God is really important, I think, is because fear and anxiety are not a sin, they are a signal to stop tending the things that help us anticipate evil and to start actively using that energy to tend the things that help us get in the right position, know where we are in relation to God, which is really little. Get to trembling on the inside, knowing that you are small and He is big, and you are not in control, but He is in control, and you don't know what's going on, but He is trustworthy, and you don't really want to be in this moment, but He is good. To start tending those thoughts, to start getting in a position where we start to fear God, because this is where it gets good, I think. Fear of God, being the beginning of wisdom, is essentially the door that God uses to teach us to live in His reality. Wisdom is just life skills for eternity. He's trying to teach us how to live in His reality before we get there. We can live in there right now, but it takes a bit of work. It takes us stopping, giving all our affection and our care to the things that would make us anticipate awful things happening to us or happening to the ones that we love. Taking that energy and using it to open a door into His reality and His world. And the door starts through the fear of God. Very, very important. So that's what I learned this week. Now let me tell you how I really learned it. Wednesday evening, I was at the park. We were having a great time actually. I had a busy work week. Jay had taken the afternoon off, and I was like, we both had work on Wednesday night. Take the kids to the pools. We'll take the kids to the pools and we'll go to the park. And it was a sunny day, warmer than today, beautiful, blue skies, great music playing. Good day, it was a good day. Finished at the pools and we had a little bit of time, so we thought, there's a park by the pools. Let's go to the park. Kids wanted to go to the park, let's go to the park. Went to the park, playing on the rocket ship, playing on the swings, climbing frames. It's beautiful. There was this thing there I've never seen before in my life. It was like a big frisbee, big round thing. You sit on it, and the bottom part's probably about up to my knees, and the top maybe up to my hips. It's on an angle like that. My son and my daughter jumped on. My daughter was having a great time. My son not so much. He went off and did something else. And my daughter, we were having a great afternoon. Literally, this is the irony, is that we were like, isn't this a great day? This is a great day. And then she goes, Mum, it's going too fast. Can you stop it? As she went past me. So I turned around to grab this big frisbee thing, and as I came back towards her, she'd already fallen off on the low end. And I thought, oh, here we go, I'm in for it now. She's grazed her knee. And she kind of was looking at her knee, and as she stood up to give me a growling, we both saw her arm, and her arm was, I'm not a squeamish person. Like, I grew up in the country. I've been skinning things and killing things and gutting things my whole life, you know. I didn't consider myself a squeamish person, but I saw her arm, and it was, it was not good. And it was like hanging here like it was detached. There was like a big, it just looked not good, you know, not good. And, you know, you all know my daughter. She loves a bit of drama, so she started screaming her head off. And Mum, who I thought I had quite a good head under pressure, but I just go, her arm! Even afterwards, Jay was like, why did you do that? Like, you made it worse. I was like, I didn't remember doing that. So Jay grabbed her, I called an ambulance. And I went and I was waiting on the corner, the ambulance came. Great, ambos are incredible, aren't they? Ambulance came, took us to RPA. She gets every drug known to man, this kid. Wow, I've got everything I've ever heard of and then some more. We saw the x-ray come up on the screen, and by this time she's sort of bleeding all over herself. And it turns out that the bone in her arm here had broken, and some of it had come out around her forearm. Some of it was still in there, and it was sort of dangle city, but I mean, people break their arms, right? So it was unfortunate, but she went into surgery that night. And in surgery for ages, right? And I took my son home, we got him showered, got him sorted out, packed some bags, came home, and me and Dooney, Jay had gone into surgery with her and he was waiting somewhere else. Me and Dooney are waiting in the room, and at this moment, I begin to anticipate evil. I don't know, I have so much respect for Ma and George and Brian and Mark's, people who have actually lost children and gone through that fight. More power to you, that is a miracle. And I know it doesn't seem that bad, it's just a broken arm, right? But you know, in that you've been busy, or you're elevated, and then it's dark, the room's dark, it's that kind of weird orange light. The nurse was also weird, didn't know if he liked me at that point, still not sure if he likes me at this point. Everything was odd, and it was quiet. Dooney had gone to sleep, and I'm just like, why is it taking so long? You know, I'm beginning to anticipate evil. And I think, people die under anaesthesia, don't they? Maybe that's why it's taking so long. Maybe she's never been sick before, so maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something else wrong with her. Like, maybe, you never know. Maybe how would I know if she's got a heart condition? I don't know. And I think, my niece went to hospital with a sore stomach at Christmas time. She never left. She was passed away. She was with Jesus 3 months later. My other niece went to hospital with cancer, beat the cancer and caught like a flesh-eating bacteria that ate literally all of her insides. And she was very lucky to be alive. She is a miracle that she is alive. Bad things happen at hospitals. Why is it taking so long? I began to anticipate evil. And you know the landslide of anticipating evil, I know we all know it. Once you lose a step on that mountain. The good thing for me is I already knew all this stuff, and I could catch myself. Like, by the time I'm thinking about necrotizing fasciitis, I realised what was happening for me. And I thought, oh God, now I need to do the work of taking my mind and my heart off these things and putting them on the fear of God things. But to be honest, in that moment, it wasn't the easiest thing to do. I started listening to some stuff, didn't matter, I was still very elevated, guys. And I knew that I just needed to hear myself say it. By this time, Aya had come back and there had been some complications in her surgery. So she came back and she was a little bit out of it. Jade and Dooney went home. It's like literally the middle of the night now. And I'm like, I guess I just need to pray, don't I? So I said, baby, go to sleep and I'm just going to pray. And I started. To be honest, it starts off kind of begging, don't you think? It starts off like, please, God, heal me. There's no pulse in her finger. Like, please, I know you do stuff with cells. Like, please, please. It starts off begging. But it was good to listen to myself because it takes some time sometimes, but over time, my please do this, do that became like, I know that you do. Like, I know that you're good. And I know that you heal. And I know that you make nothing out of some. You make something out of nothing, so you can make something out of this. Like, it started to become more declarative. And the more that happened for me, the more I started to open the door to a different reality. The fear of God is just an opportunity. It's an open door into a different reality. But it takes a lot of work sometimes to get there. The very good thing for me is I realised when I had passed that point. I realised when I was back into the right space. And it was really good for me because honestly, for the next probably 18 hours, it just got worse and worse and worse. She didn't have pulse in her finger. The next day, the pulse was even less. They had to take off her cast. She was not a happy chappy. If you know my daughter, she screamed the hospital to pieces. We got a private room because she was so violently loud. And she got a little bit scared when the cast came off. It was a bit traumatic for her, and then she just refused to help anyone forever. So she actually had to go back into theatre for them to even assess what was happening with her arm, to figure out why her fingers were dying. And then they did that. Here's the thing that I wonder now. At this point, we had a vascular surgeon come to see us. And he said this interesting thing. He says, everybody's saying kids' vascularity is good. They usually recover quite well by themselves. There is, of course, a risk. The textbooks say, I've checked my latest textbook, it says that I should just leave it. I should just leave it and see what happens. And all of my colleagues, I've spoken to a lot of my colleagues, and they say I should just wait and see what happens. But I have a 6-year-old, and I wouldn't want me to operate on my 6-year-old. He's like, I'm good at what I do. I have absolute confidence in myself, but I operate on adults, and I have a 6-year-old. And if it was my 6-year-old, I'd want a surgeon who looks after 6-year-olds to be looking after her. So even though his colleagues told him not to do it, even though the textbook said not to do it, he transferred us to a children's hospital. Ambulance comes with lights and sirens, we're off again. She's, again, not very happy, abusing a few handbos that time. We go to the children's hospital, they take her back into theatre, they redo it. Turns out that there had been damage to her arteries. Before we went into theatre, actually, they were like, what we think has happened is her artery's been kind of munched up somehow. We're probably going to have to take an artery out of her leg and put it in her arm. But we'll just go see what happens. What happened was that her artery was fine. It had been damaged by the bone, and so there's a blood clot in it still at the moment. And the fracture wasn't quite right for her little thing, so some muscles had been caught in the bone repair. But they took it all out, put in new pins, the baby doctor did his baby thing, the baby vein guy did his baby thing. It was kind of a miracle. Like, it looks like, maybe not, but it's for us. It's kind of a miracle. And I wonder, like, if I had been so consumed with my fear as that happened, it still would have probably happened. There would still have been a miracle for us. But I just wonder if I would have missed it because I was so busy tending my fears. And I wonder for all of us. We all have fears. They're all happening all the time. If you grow, you will have fears. This was a completely new battle for me. But I'm sure there'll be more, because I already had a few. But if we're so busy tending our limitations and anticipating that evil might happen to us emotionally and physically, and just that we're not up to it and we can't do it and it's too much. If we're so busy tending to that stuff, do we miss a miracle somewhere else? I know we don't want to be like that. So I know we want to be people that know how to fear God, so that we can open the door into understanding and living in His reality. Fear and anxiety, it's not a sin, it's a signal. It's a signal to stop tending the anticipation of evil in our minds and in our hearts, and to put all of that energy into finding our correct position in relation to God, so that we can open the door into seeing as He sees. That's what Jesus did all the time, right? He only did what He saw His Father do because He lived in His Father's reality. Wisdom is the way that we live in that reality. The fear of God is the door that allows us to access that reality, and it deserves all of our attention. And it will take all of our attention to get our minds off that and onto that and through that open door.